All right, Doctor, thank you for joining me today. Obviously, we got some exciting news this week, or at least it's exciting to some people. It's also kind of concerning to some others, and that is that the CDC has apparently sent a letter to governors all around the country saying, get ready, get your states ready for a mass vaccination program starting on November 1st. What do you think of that? Could that even be true?
You know, that is super exciting to think about. I mean, we've been stuck in this quagmire of quarantine and kids back to school virtual and businesses with restrictions and social distancing. How awesome would it be to have a vaccine? While we're hearing that from the CDC, that's very exciting. It sounds a little bit ambitious. What we know right now is that there's 2 vaccines from 2 different companies, Pfizer and Moderna, that are trying to push this vaccine through. They kind of are doing sort of a sidestep with doing the phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials that look at safety and efficacy in small populations. Fast track to the phase 3, where they do it in a bigger population. And traditionally, this can take up to a year for most vaccines to understand the safety and efficacy of that. But if they're seeing benefit up front, and I think that was clear from the CDC and Dr. Fauci, that they would consider pushing this to an emergent, more available level. And as it is right now, I believe both companies together have about 3 million vaccines. They're looking to distribute that in a pool of 5 cities, New York, Chicago among them. And they're really trying to target vulnerable populations. So essential workers like healthcare workers, first responders, national security, government workers, extended to the elderly, those in prison, and Native American population. So it's really going to be exciting to see how that rolls out. A lot of it depends on how willing they are to push it beyond the scope of clinical trial and efficacy at a short number and cut that short to an expanded emergent access.
Doctor, am I hearing you say that in some respects, this is kind of like continuing the experiment? If, in fact, they're going to give the vaccine to, in a sense, regular people starting in November?
I trust that the ethics of these companies and the regulations put down by the CDC would only put this forth if they understand with good credibility that it's safe and effective. And if we know that the vaccine works, we've understood it working with in different virus subsets, and we don't see any limitation, it could be very appropriate and ethical to push that forward.
As a doctor, what are the problems with moving quickly? What are the dangers, if you will, of moving quickly on a vaccine like this?
Well, you know, I'm not going to sound the alarms, but it can take months up to a year to really get to those phase 3 clinical trials. Different patient populations, different ethnic groups, different age spectrum. And you may not get the data you need to understand the efficacy in certain populations. We know that elderly people may not mount a response to a vaccine as well as a young person. Side effect profile, generally we know vaccines are safe, but understanding that is very important. There can be very, very rare, generally 1 in a million chance of some sort of adverse reaction like a allergic reaction.
You think it's that much? 1 in a million?
Well, we know that for the MMR vaccine, for example, you simply dying of the measles, if you were to contract it, is 1 in 500. You to have an allergic reaction to the measles vaccine is less than 1 in a million. So safety is there from a vaccine standpoint. We shouldn't be worried about that. But I think we really need to trust the ethical standards of the CDC and holding these companies accountable to produce a safe product.
Let me ask you a loaded question then, Doctor. Would you take a vaccine that's been developed in 7 months?
Understanding the governing bodies that are involved currently and with the leadership that I see now, I don't see any reason why not.
And the other side of that coin, obviously, if there is a vaccine, and you started our conversation this way, what an exciting moment it would be, because in a sense, it would be able to start getting this pandemic under control worldwide.
Oh, absolutely. That cannot be understated. I mean, when we think about all these rules and regulations and quarantine, social distancing, schools, virtual, it's only a matter of time until that vaccine comes out. And we see it kind of as the end of the light. But I won't overstate it, though, that this thing is far from over. We're going to see COVID-19 for the next 1 to 2 years, maybe beyond. There's going to be, those who don't have access to the vaccine, those that may not take it. And healthcare inequality is rampant in this country. And I don't think we've seen the end of the story, but it's very exciting to think about the end, or the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will.
Let's talk about a practical issue, and that is these governors have been, in a sense, warned or alerted to put a plan together, because they're going to get some of this vaccine if in fact this happens on November 1st or thereabouts. What do you see from a medical point of view in terms of vaccinating hundreds and hundreds, millions of people in this country, millions in some of the states, as quickly as possible? What kind of medical problems, challenges could that pose?
Well, we want to make sure that there's enough product out there. I mean, as it stands right now, 10 million vaccines by the end of the year by the two companies that potentially will be able to have this activated is not enough. And then who's going to get it? I mean, we already know, they've told us that it's going to be, first responders, healthcare workers, and vulnerable populations. Well, then who's next? And then how is it disseminated? The Mayo Clinic is right now working on a plan for distribution in targeted populations. The details of that are all not worked out, but that plan is in place and is a goal ahead. But it's going to be a challenge ahead for those governors. Where do you put it? Do you target it to hotspots? Do you target it to vulnerable populations? Who's going to get it and who needs to get it? And that could be very difficult. Population density varies in cities and states, and that's going to be a big challenge ahead.
Let me just circle back to where we started, and that is, there are some people who are skeptical about whether or not this vaccine can really be rolled out by then. Do you believe that the CDC is viable in terms of sending these letters out, or is this going to be another, if you will, disappointment in this battle against the COVID-19?
I believe that the right leaders are in charge at the top down, and we need to trust them. I think ethical standards are in place to make sure a safe and effective product comes out. And that's really one of the reasons why it's taken so long. And it's very difficult for people to understand reasonably, why do these vaccines take so long? And while some things have been fast-tracked where they can, I have no reason to believe that we'll be set up for disappointment. But I wouldn't be surprised if there is some delay.
All right, Doctor. Thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ross.
All right.